welcome to the debate. I'm your host, Maqbool, with you at PTV WORLD. In today's show, we will be talking about two important stories. The first is with reference to the U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, which of course has triggered a lot of debate over this particular visit and the kind of responses that we've seen coming in from Beijing, which also include the Chinese military launching massive drills around Taiwan and in 6 zones surrounding the island as well. We have seen, of course, that the Sino-American relations have continued to suffer in the past as well. And of course, things have been shaky in recent times as well. And so it comes to question whether or not we're going to be able to see any success coming out of this visit, what the point of this visit was, what has been achieved by the U.S. Since, of course, we have seen in the aftermath of this particular visit, questions being raised and, of course, things being affected around the Taiwanese waters as well, and China responding aggressively as well. Of course, we know that China is also somebody who talks about the one China policy. The US also is somebody who agrees with that, and we have seen that in previous times as well, this particular policy has not been outrightly questioned. But yet again, such moves by the US, including its senior speaker visiting Taiwan and then also talking about the world facing a choice between democracy and autocracy, points towards whether or not the US can actually afford such rhetoric at this time. So we're going to be talking about this particular visit, the kind of impact it has had, and of course the potential of escalation that exists not only around Taiwan but also in terms of US-American relations. Our second segment is going to look at the political situation at home, and we're going to be talking about, of course, what has been happening since the verdict has come out regarding the prohibited funding case regarding the PTI and its accounts, something, of course, in the aftermath of which we've seen many different reactions coming in from the PDM and the PTI as well, which included a protest outside the ECP today by senior PTI lawmakers, also something that was mirrored in ECP offices in Karachi and Lahore. We've also seen a large gathering of protests in F9 Park in Islamabad, and we saw the ex-Prime Minister address the nation through video link, talking about how this particular issue is not something that is valid, it's not something that is done objectively, and that the CCC and the ECP is put under question. Also saying that taking money from foreign companies was not illegal in 2012, and he submitted a certificate, not an affidavit. So we'll be talking more about that as well. But in response to this particular verdict, of course, we've been seeing the PDM and its own reactions as well, which included, of course, a discussion regarding this in the Federal Cabinet meeting today, after which the Minister, Mariam Aurangzeb, apprised us about what really happened and the decisions the government is going to be taking regarding this matter, which includes sending a declaration against the PTI to the Supreme Court as well. The Law Ministry has 3 days to prepare this declaration, which is going to be presented in the next Federal Cabinet meeting. It also includes action taken under the Political Parties Order 2002 and the Election Act 2017. While simultaneously also the FIA and other investigation agencies have apparently begun probing into this as well, and they have of course been tasked with the responsibility of taking a look into the financial matters that were under discussion, particularly in this case as well. So we're going to be seeing a reported investigation coming out from that as well, while at the same time the PDM has filed a reference seeking a disqualification of Imran Khan under Article 63. So all of this is what has been happening simultaneously, and including all of this, we've also seen that this particular situation has piqued the political narratives, the political games of different political parties as well, and the entire scenario once again is full of uncertainty, full of question as to what is going to happen, while of course we have our economic challenges still remaining. So we're going to be talking about that in our next segment. For this and more, we've been joined in the studios as always by Farrukh Pitafi and Raja Faisal. And for our first segment regarding the U.S. Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan and its impact, we've been joined online by senior analyst Mr. Humayun Khan. Thank you very much, Mr. Humayun, for joining us and being a part of the debate. I'll start with you, Humayun. When we talk about this particular visit, of course, it's being asked as to what really was the necessity of this particular visit, why it was done so, why it was important for Nancy Pelosi to make this stop in this tour, and really what did the U.S. actually gain out of it. Can you help us understand the motivation behind this visit?
I think explain what the Chinese foreign minister just said the other day about the visit. He described the visit as maniac, irresponsible, and irrational. It didn't gain anything except it has created problems for Taiwan, 23 million people there. It created problem for China and US. It created problem for the entire Asia Pacific. I think,
Right.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So, well, this has created a lot of problems. China and USA were not having very good relations for the last couple of years. There was, when President Trump was in power, he initiated what people call the trade war between China and the United States of America. All important world issues, there was a disagreement between United States of America and China. And for Taiwan, this was a red line which China has been consistently saying to the world. And by the way, the United States of America
Right.
Right.
We may have
still
lost you.
that there's only one China.
Yes, carry on.
I
So
think
the
I
official
continue.
stance of this United States of America is still that there is only one China, that is People's Republic of China. So this visit, it was absolutely, in many people's opinion, something which has created more problems for the relationship, and it has not done anything good for the people of Taiwan, for the people of China, and for the people of Asia Pacific.
Right, and
Now, a
I
lot of
understand
people
that,
say, what?
and I understand that, Humayun. But what I wanted to understand was, of course, there must be some sort of thought process involved in making this stop from the U.S. side, right? What was that?
Well, no, officially, the CIA, Pentagon, State Department, all the generals of President Biden administration before the visit, they were saying and they were telling President Biden that the timing of this visit is unnecessary and she should avoid. Now, the argument that they give in the United States of America that the legislature is different and executive is different, so the House leader can decide about her own policies and nobody is going to dictate her. But all the analysis which was happening when she was trying to come to this side was against that. But she still insisted that she is pro-democracy and she wanted to help the people of Taiwan. Basically, this particular
Right.
relationship
So,
with Taiwan is.
just quickly, I want to understand. So, Pelosi's actions are not really bound by the foreign policy of the U.S. or the larger interests that U.S. has outlined for itself in terms of its relations with other countries. She can act independently. Is that what you're saying?
This is what the explanation they are giving now. But since she is also a Democrat, she is the head of the House, which is controlled by the Democrat. So, despite the fact that she says her action was independent, and by the way, you also need to know she is number two in the line of succession. After president, it's the vice president, and after vice president, she is somebody who
Yeah.
can become the president of the United States of America. So this does not constitute in any way an independent private trip. She also took a delegation of 5 members of Senate and Parliament of House of Congress as well. So even though they are trying to now calm down the whole situation which is erupted in the Asia Pacific, the only reason they are giving that she is an independent legislature and she can take whatever stance she can. But nobody in China is believing that. And it is the second highest visit in 25 years. In 1998, the House Speaker then, Garrett Gingrich, he visited.
Yeah,
Right.
Newt Gingrich also did. Yeah,
Yes,
that's true.
Faisal, you had a question?
Yeah, Humayun, I just wanted to ask, obviously, by the looks of it, we can simply say that in the political hierarchy of US, there is a clear divide on one China policy. Obviously, I think if they have a stance right now, that the official stance is that they do accept and endorse one China policy. But can we say that in coming future we might see a different stance from the US?
I think we're already seeing a lot of difference in their stance, despite the fact that the official State Department still believes when they signed this treaty with the joint communique with the Chinese government, and they officially recognized United People's Republic of China. Since then, there was a Taiwan Relation Act through which they interact with the Taiwanese. Mind you, there has been a massive number of arms sale in last couple of years to Taiwan by the U.S. government. In President Obama's tenure, 2 terms, he sold 22 billion US worth of weapons to Taiwan. In Trump's time, he sold 20 billion US dollars. And as of now, in last year, so when Biden is in power, they've already sold $1.2 billion worth of arms to Taiwan. So this is like a very dichotomy in their thinking and policy. And this is what they call strategic ambiguity. And they're not making it a strategic clarity as to if they believe there is only one China, why they are arming Taiwan against China all the time. So this is somehow a policy of United States of America for a very long time, that despite the fact they want to have good relations with the China, they are still keeping Taiwan as a trump card where they can always use. And now we have a new government in Taiwan, which is represented by a pro-independence party, DPP. So they have been doing these overtures over and over. We were expecting that probably this president in Taiwan would have told Nancy Pelosi not to visit. And by the way, it was not in her itinerary as well of the 4 countries that she have visited, but she just landed Wednesday night and spent a good one night there. And next day she met the president, the Speaker of the House, and few of the human rights activists as well. So this is like a clear dichotomy, and a strategic ambiguity policy continues in the US towards China.
Right. I want to understand some things, Farrukh. When we take a look at this particular discussion, then this talk of whether or not this was part of the tour as well. And then, of course, the kind of statements have been coming from the US since then, talking about this being an independent visit. It seems that perhaps these are face-saving measures. Do you think that this has serious implications in the US, or is it causing any problems within the US administration as well as a consequence of this particular visit or these actions? Will there be such a debate in the US?
I think the debate already started, Sana. There are 2 things that you have to understand. One, this strategic ambiguity of one China policy that emanates from what is now called Shanghai Communique of 1972. When during the Nixon administration it was stated that they actually actually believe in the Chinese claim on this territory as well. You understand that this area was once called Formosa, and it was in 1971 that Taiwan, that actually enjoyed until then the permanent membership of UNSC, was replaced by China, right? PRC. So this is one aspect which is very important, because Nixon administration did many things that today's American administration cannot stand with. So they have been evolving their position repeatedly. And at this moment, when you talk about the US perspective, they clearly see China as a major challenger or competitor. That's why they came up with Quad, they came up with umpteen other arrangements as well. But the second thing that you have to understand is what is going on within the US. While sitting here on these parts, in these parts, we can say that the US is a monolith, that whatever their government decides, everything accordingly happens. That is not the truth. One, they have term limits for presidents, and presidents keep on changing, and their policies change as well. And in that, their branches of government are co-equal. For example, their parliament, or what we call Congress, is as powerful, almost as powerful as the executive or the chief head of state, and then also judiciary. So their head, or house's head, also has the capacity to forge relationship independent of administration's relationship. There is one example that comes to mind. If you remember, when Iran actually cut this deal with the US, JCPOA, at that time Netanyahu actually was told by Obama administration not to come and address US Congress. But he nevertheless came, and leaving aside the Obama administration, he spoke to the joint session of their Congress. So what you have to understand at this moment is that these things can be independent as well. On the other side, then you have to look at how Democrats have been behaving. Their attitude has been to prove themselves more muscular than the Republicans. But usually it always helps the Republicans, because they then can use whatever is left to shore up their more muscular policy. So the entire situation in this, I think Nancy Pelosi is an independent actor. She is 90 plus now. and she has her own belief system. If you look in YouTube, you will see her videos where in early 1990s she went to China, and there she waved actually this black flag in support of pro-democracy dissidents in China, right? So she has been doing this for quite some time. But the problem is, while she might have done whatever she thought was right, it might have created a lot of dynamics in this region as well that can unfold and can actually culminate into some broader kind of conflict.
Right, absolutely. Yes,
yes.
Faisal, you wanted to add something to that?
Yes, so now I wanted to highlight a couple of things. Number one, we need to look at obviously a meetup that took place back in January this year during Winter Olympics, obviously in Beijing. Two of the giants of the world, they met each other, and of course they discussed and highlighted so many things at that time. I'm talking about President Putin and President Xi. We need to know that right after that meetup, very next month, in Ukraine, of course, Russians, they entered in. And it was expected, and you remember we in our program highlighted this fact that we might see similar kind of situation in coming future related to Taiwan as well. At that time we did talk about it. I wanted to highlight here that at that time, of course, both of the countries, Russia and China, they increased their bilateral trade from $117.6 billion to $200 billion. And of course, if they had done that at that time, it must have been with the understanding of what kind of changes might take place in the region in coming future. Right now, I'm expecting that the way US is penetrating in East Asia, obviously in East China Sea, to me it feels like we might see in coming future another military alliance. We need to understand that the Taiwan itself, it has more than 300,000 troops, active troops as well.
Right.
And at the same time, if Americans, they seek alliance, they already have a couple of more alliances. I'm talking about South Korea and I'm talking about Japan. They have the alliances and they can increase their alliances in East China Sea, and they can pose a threat to China.
Yes,
and Sana,
you're repeating, shaking of the head.
I know that you have to go to Humayun.
No, I'll be going to you. I need to find out the reason for that.
This idea, this idea that during Olympics, the two leaders of two very powerful countries actually met, and they might have actually cooked up some plan. I'm sorry, I don't agree with this, because it reminds me of a similar kind of debate that is going on Fox TV. Tucker Carlson, who keeps on saying that there might be, or other Fox talking heads also, that there might be Biden administration's compromise with these two powers, that you suddenly take over Ukraine and you take over Taiwan and we will do nothing, and then we will take over Iran. So this kind of speculations continue. Okay. I don't think that there's any meat to it. The fact is that all countries actually are driven by their own view of maximalist and minimalist national interest, and that's why China will do what actually helps it. I think at this moment it is only firing, warning shots. It is not doing much beyond that. China's policy has been for past 25 years that it will peacefully rise and take over what belongs to it. So it has already taken over Hong Kong and Macau. And I think that with Taiwan, the situation gradually will be such that they will be able to build commonalities. They can wait for as long as it takes. China has the fear of encirclement. That's why it keeps on actually going for various projects. For example, this trade agreement with Russia, then also BRI, and our CPEC as well. And that is all. I don't think that there is a bigger strategic conspiracy to actually take over these countries.
Humayun, can you enlighten us regarding this, when we obviously talk about there might be an adventure?
He wants to comment on what was said also.
That
US adventure, can we see that any?
Reunification of Taiwan with the mainland. This has been a policy since very long. Since President Xi has resumed the power, we have seen a lot of good moves. That there was trade which has increased between Taiwan and China. There was tourist exchanges. There was business to business exchanges. Taiwan has invested huge amount in mainland China, and mainland Chinese investors have invested in Taiwan. So I think China still believe in peaceful reunification, and its model is completely different than the Western global powers, which was using force. Although China has repeatedly said that they reserved the right to use force if their red lines were crossed. But other than that, they were using means like Belt and Road, ASEAN, and many other excellent moves. So I think I agree with the assumptions or analysis of Patafi Saab. This particular move has, we are still getting out of the crisis the world has witnessed because of Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah.
And now
Yeah.
starting this new issue in the East Asia or Asia Pacific was completely uncalled for. With this Nancy Pelosi's move, US has become a new bigger threat to peace and stability in Asia Pacific region.
Exactly.
And it's basically undermining the status quo, which was very well maintained for last couple
Right,
of years.
Mr. Humayun, I want to understand that bit. When you talk about how this poses a new serious threat in the region, and at the same time when we're talking about how perhaps the use of force or any such conflict with regards to Taiwan seems less likely a possibility, and that China has a different way of proceeding with this or a different strategy of proceeding with this, what exactly is the real threat that the region is
The
faced
move
with?
we have seen that after the visit, the Chinese announced their Eastern Theater Command that they're going to conduct live military exercises, which was basically
Yes,
target
I understand.
assault, strike.
Yes.
Yeah, there seems to be
There
some
seems to be a problem.
communication.
But I still want to understand, Farrukh, perhaps you can take this, is that when you talk about this being warning shots, then what really is the likelihood of China actually using force in this matter, or an actual escalation of security threat in the region post this visit?
Now, you're talking about two different things, right? I don't think that China is directly going to use force. It has just flexed its muscles, nothing else. But I read something very strange and worrying, and that was that Foreign Minister of Japan has claimed that certain missiles actually fell in its territory. So there is a possibility of escalation. It will always be there. But eventually, I think that the saner minds will prevail, and eventually all these countries have to work together. So right now, there might be this push or this pull to create new world order or some kind of divisions within divisions and to create blocks. But I don't think things are going to actually work that way. This idea that somehow America and China can decouple and that they can actually totally become enemies, that is not realistic. Their economy is so interdependent even today. During Trump's time, he actually escalated this trade war with China, and the immediate result was that chips, microchips all over the country, all over the world actually became extinct.
Yes.
And that was a big problem. Similarly, so many other things, technology dependence. Huawei was banned in America, and immediately we saw that not only it affected Huawei, it also affected US producers as well. So there is not a possibility that we can actually take hammer to this complicated masonry of international order and try to create something new or something old for that matter. So I don't think we are going to relapse into a Cold War, but for now, because there are so many hot heads sitting everywhere, there is always a possibility of some kind of escalation. But if Ukraine is an example, it did not lead to a broader war. Europe didn't directly start fighting Russia. So I think that there still is the Cold War restraint that you don't actually start a hot war or some kind of aggression.
Right, absolutely. Let me also take this opportunity to thank Mr. Mayuhan, since he's no longer with us in the debate, but thank you for being a part of the debate and talking to us regarding this particular visit. Faisal, I believe you had something to add to that, but we have time now to move on to our next segment, unfortunately, so you can add on to that as well. If there's a quick comment, I'll give you this one.
It is a very quick comment. I think for now, we would only see that there will be summoning the ambassador, and obviously protesting in front of him and seeking an apology.
All right, let's see. We'll be moving on now to our next segment, which is regarding politics at home and what is going on regarding PTI's prohibited funding case. And as an overview, we've seen many measures being taken by the PTI and the PTM as well, which includes a protest by the PTI in front of the ECP as well, in a public gathering in F9 Park as well, and also sending in a memorandum against the Chief Election Commissioner. From the PTM side, we've seen that there was discussion in the federal cabinet today, and they have decided to issue a declaration in the Supreme Court. The Law Ministry has 3 days to prepare it and present it in the federal cabinet meeting in the next one. And then, of course, they have also begun investigation through FIA into this case, while also submitting a reference in the ECP for disqualification of Imran Khan in this particular case. So, Farrukh, all of these things, of course, have been happening simultaneously, and we've seen both the parties taking different measures. But the question, of course, still remains whether or not we're going to be really seeing a consequence of this very soon. We were speaking to a lawyer in a previous show today, and they talked about how these things will take a lot of time. So perhaps we're not really looking for a serious change in the recent future. But when we talk about the possibilities or the kind of impact it can have on the PTI and its political future as well, do you think that the PTI is in serious trouble?
I think that it is in trouble because now the federal government actually commands a lot of authority and has a lot of tools at its disposal. So that means that the government of Pakistan, the federal government or the ruling coalition, if it finds something wrong with PTI, can multiply that and make it really turn it into a suffering, right?
Sure.
But today we saw a couple of things which are really, really important to understand. One, today we saw PTI's approach. Earlier we had been told that they are going to protest in front of election commission, but today we saw that they were not going for a thorough confrontationist policy, right? Instead of that, they went to F9 Park and protested there. Imran Khan Sahab was not even there on the venue. He actually spoke from his, I think, Banigala house, and from that they actually directly beamed their message. But what it tells me is that PTI also understands that it is taking a lot of heat. Because in the end, when you actually had built your narrative of a foreign conspiracy, you could know that this could happen or this decision could come and reflect negatively on your record as well. And then the federal government has actually sent a matter of investigating the use of these funds to FIA. FIA is going to do two things. One, whether this money was used for anything shoddy. And then the second thing, connecting foreign funds or the funds that came from abroad with what was happening in Pakistan. Remember that there were many important events. For example, 2011 Imran Khan's event in Lahore, and then 2014 sit-in in Islamabad that continued for months. So these kind of things can actually then play to the gallery, and they can be used to undercut the popularity of PTI. So at this moment, it seems that the federal government is kind of strengthening its position, and PTI, which had after Lahore's or Punjab's by-polls become very strong, is understanding that it is in trouble, if not in deep trouble.
Right. Let us also welcome in the debate Barrister Abdullah Mumtaz, who's a leader PTI, and Zulfikar Ali Badr, leader PPP. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us in the show today. I'll start with you, Barrister Abdullah, because I want to understand a few things as well. Firstly, we've seen that in the video link today, in his address, the former Prime Minister spoke about how taking money from foreign companies was not illegal until 2017, and it wasn't illegal back in 2012, where he claims is the start of this particular case. Can you help me understand this particular legality, and in terms of what the decision has come out from the ECP, how does this particular area play out? Because of course there have been submissions throughout the years as well. There has been talk from the ECP that there were accounts not disclosed, that the submissions given by Imran Khan were inaccurate. So how does this particular issue that is being raised now, that this is something that dates back to 2012, play out in this scenario?
For having me on your show. I would like to firstly state that all of this is a massive storm in a small teacup. The last 3.5 years, the whole country saw how the PDM cried itself hoarse that we should have elections, and they do not accept the legitimacy of the PTI government. And when Imran Khan gave them the election on a silver platter back in April of this year, they immediately ran to the Supreme Court asking for the court to restore the same government that has been trying to bring down for the last 3.5 years. And they said, please bring it back somehow, and it was restored. And now we've seen how the government is in existence. It's now being relegated to being the federal government of a small enclave in Islamabad. So the question you have again is a very interesting question as to what Imran Khan Sahib has said today in the Jalsa, in the F9 part speech. He basically said, which is something which is a fundamental tenet of our rule of law, that laws cannot be retrospective. And indeed, he's quite correct that back in 2012, they did not have these laws and regulations in place to prevent foreign companies from funding. And let's also get to the basics of what this funding actually is. All of this funding came from Pakistanis, either they're Pakistani individuals or Pakistanis through their companies that they had set up. So they're in essence Pakistanis. So, and this funding, the period that is being looked at is from 2008 to 2013. All of this precedes the 2007 when the laws and regulations came into place. So at that time, it was not legal. For the PTI, we smell a rat. This is basically a way to a lifeline that has been given to the PDM to rescue itself, because it was drowning under the inflation and the economic meltdown that's been happening in Pakistan for the past 3 to 4 weeks. Clearly, there's no economic plan. So Khan Sahib, after having won the Punjab back, in addition to the governments in KPK, Azad Kashmir, Gilgit-Baltistan, was obviously going to go to Islamabad to call for fresh elections in September, October, and to try to push the can down the road, so as to speak. PDM has now been given a lifeline, and they're going to try and drag it out as much as possible until April or September next year. So the reason why they're doing this is because they want to be able to rule and to make the people forget about the inflation that there has been caused as a result of their misgovernance over the past 3.5 months. And that's it.
Barrister Abdullah, you also mentioned the fact that these were Pakistani companies, but of course the issue again is funding from companies, whether or not they are foreign or Pakistani, right? And I understand that this is something that is being argued that this is post 2017, but does that not actually still affect the entire case? Because even after that, these facts were not disclosed.
No, it does not. It does not affect the case at all, because, like I said, a fundamental tenet of the rule of law is that laws cannot be retrospective. In this case, there was no law at that time to prevent such funding. But what I want to emphasize is we are a country where we've had political parties being funded by a terrorist known as Osama bin Laden. Clearly, we have the speech of Bilawal Zardari Sahib on record as well, where he calls out to Mian Nawaz Sharif. I know
Barrister Abdullah, sorry to cut you. I understand that you're going to make a political point, but this last assertion that you just made, hang on. This last assertion you just made, I mean, we don't have any proven record. Could you actually realize that this is English channel, we are talking in front of the entire world and not make such assertions? No, you can use any kind of accusations against the ruling coalition, but why actually drag Pakistan into it?
No, not at all. There's actually, if you look at the Mehran Gate case, it's a Supreme Court judgment on this as well, how monies were used. And I'm not making things here. I'm only commentating on what Chairman Bilawal Zardari Sahib, who is the current foreign minister.
All right. Let us also go to Zulfikar Ali Sahib as well and speak to him regarding the PDM's choices as well. We've seen that there have been a number of discussions regarding what the government is going to be doing now, and it seems they're not going to let this case go very easily is at the crux of it. We've seen that the federal cabinet has decided to issue a declaration. They've also filed a reference in the ECP, and they've also started an investigation through the FIA. Regarding all of these measures, I want to understand when we talk about PDM strategy moving forward and the way that this particular case is going to be taken, how are these measures going to facilitate in terms of what the PDM really is seeking? At the moment, it seems that the only thing that is being pushed towards is disqualification or banning of the party and disqualification of Imran Khan. But it doesn't seem to be quite impacted by what we need to hear from everybody or all our institutions, which is what really happened or what really is the case here. That seems to have been taken in the background, and right now it just seems to be a kind of political impact coming in from the PDM towards the PTI. Why is it that we have seen this particular essence and emphasization on this?
And if I could add that if PDM is seeking obviously disqualification of Imran Khan or PTI as a party, could it be achieved before the next general elections?
And Bata Sahab, I hope you can actually handle 3 questions in a row. My question is very simple. Why is it that the ruling coalition seems so confident that it will negatively impact PTI?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much for inviting me to your show. There are a few other comments I want to add. I will start from the last. That PTM, the National Unity Government and its allies are very much confident, and they know what Mr. Khan have done and how he has received the funding from abroad, and this funding was prohibited, and he was not supposed to take it, but he still took the funds from number of companies and number of individuals. So we are pretty sure that we have the case, and we will go into the Supreme Court. We'll knock the door, and we'll come out on a positive note from the Supreme Court. It will have an impact in the general elections, and it will come not before, most likely before the general elections, because Mr. Khan, this case will take a little time to conclude, and this will have a negative impact on Mr. Khan. And PDM has made a strategy. There were 2 different strategies. One was legal committee, one was political committee, made by the Prime Minister of the coalition parties, political allies in the National Unity Government, and they are dealing on the political front as well and on the legal front. So they have decided to go into the Supreme Court and file a reference against Mr. Khan, as he have certified through his signature that he have received the fundings. And my brother, Mr. Barrister Abdullah Kalum, was sitting, and thank you, Abdullah, for giving us an admission on this show that Mr. Khan have taken the funds from 5 different Pakistani companies as well, in addition to rest of the companies who were non-Pakistanis and foreign funded people, foreign funded companies. So I think Mr. Abdullah's admission is so far the statement of the day, that we don't have to say anything else, because Mr. Khan himself have given that certification with his signature that whatever funds he has received, he acknowledges that, and he certifies that all the funds were into his knowledge. And this was the case that any political party, he could not take any funds from any person, any individual, any organization, any corporation within Pakistan or outside of Pakistan. This was prohibited by and restricted by law, and Article 17 of the Constitution, let me read it out. Every political party shall account for the source of its funds in accordance with the law.
Right, so I understand that. Barrister Abdullah, I have a question for you. Faisal, you can add to that.
Yeah.
Barrister, when we talk about the matter of certificate and affidavit, I want to understand the difference, because this has been something that has been talked about by the former Prime Minister as well, even today in his speech. What really is the technical difference here, and whether it's an affidavit or a certificate, the content of what is being said should matter or not, and how that's going to play out in the court. And also, when we talk about a declaration being submitted in the Supreme Court by the government, I want to actually understand what exactly that the value or the significance that declaration is going to hold, and what kind of proceedings are going to start after that.
And such a coincidence, I had the same question, but I want to add in
Great
another,
things alike.
Another question now, and that is of earlier. Obviously, I asked the same question from Zulfikar Saab. It was related to how long it is going to take if they are going to take the disqualification case in the courts, because previously we saw that this particular case, it took around 8 to 9 years to decide. Are we waiting for another 8 to 9 years?
Before you speak, Barrister, can I throw myself in the line of fire of these two great minds, Sana?
You are one of them as well.
Yeah, no, but I just wanted to actually point out that this assertion that it is going to take so much time, it is not true, because it is up to the court, and no lawyer, no politician, no journalist, no analyst can actually predict how much time it can take. An honorable court can fast track it and finish the matter in days. It can also take months and years. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you for these poignant questions. Before I give the answers to the legal distinction between a certification and attestation, I would like to invite you to look at the bigger picture. What is the PDM actually trying to do? The PDM, firstly, it disenfranchised the overseas Pakistanis' right to vote. That was their first step once they came to power. And now what they're trying to do through this is they're trying to make sure that the political fundraising that has been happening, it is the first time in Pakistan's history that a political party has been fundraised by meager amounts by our foreign Pakistani diaspora. And mind you, this is not the Jewish lobby or the Hindu lobby that is supporting us or fundraising. These are people who are sitting outside, they're Pakistanis, born in Pakistan, and they're funding Pakistanis. In fact, when I read the 70-page verdict, I was so surprised that a name, Shoaib Basra, who's actually my friend from Sargodha, he's the president of Sargodha Chamber of Commerce and Industry, his donation of 10,500 rupees also comes up. And that man has never been outside this country. In fact, he's a resident of Balwal.
Barrister Sahab, sorry to cut you. Barrister Sahab, sorry to cut you. But are you saying that none of Pakistani living abroad can work as a lobbyist and cannot represent more than his own interest in these matters?
For
example, Arif Naqvi is an example. He actually was working with many interests, right? So he might be a Pakistani, but then there could be other forces which are foreign who might be actually negotiating through him.
Pitafi Sahab, that's an excellent question, but Naqvi Sahab back in 2010 and 11 was starting off his Abraj, and political relations, as you see, they happen all the time. In fact, back in the day when my own family was in People's Party and Muslim League Noon, I'm a witness to this, how the donations used to happen in Saudi Arabia, in Abu Dhabi, and the people that were involved. So Khan Sahab has already said this statement at the outset that if you want to bring this case of prohibited funding or funding by Pakistanis living abroad, let's have this across the board. Don't be selective in isolating one party and trying to settle a political agenda in respect to that. So the thing is, do it across the board, so to ensure that there's the level of fairness that is ensured.
Right, Barrister Sahab, we're almost out of time, so if you could please come to the legal questions as well.
Okay, the legal question now I want to say is there's a fundamental difference as far as my legal mind is applied between a certification and an affidavit. And of course, these issues will be grappled by the bench of the Supreme Court. As far as certification is concerned, to the best of Imran Khan, Chairman Imran Khan's ability, he was given a set of audited accounts. He had a fine set of accountants who audited his accounts, and they were able to attest and certify to him that the funds had not been obtained through prohibited sources. So he went through that report, and obviously, as you can see, the funding that happened with PTI, there's billions of rupees.
Barrister Sahab, just the difference between the content being on an affidavit and a certificate, how is that going to play out in the court?
If it's an affidavit, then it could go one of two ways. Either, I mean, even the law in this way, in this side is very unclear. We have the Khwaja Asif judgment.
But a certificate, is it not a binding document? Is a certificate not a binding document?
They're both binding documents, but with an affidavit, I believe it has much greater legal ramifications. With a certification, it is less than an affidavit, and the legal sanction within a certification, as far as I'm aware, is much less.
Is the difference substantial enough for this to be mentioned by the former Prime Minister and the PTI? I mean, the contents must be the same, right?
Yeah. So there is Supreme Court precedents. I mean, with the Khwaja Asif case, which was decided in 2017. And in that, the Supreme Court bench clearly grappled to some of these arguments.
Okay, so you might have some sort of legal advantage. All right.
Yes, very last question from Zulfikar Saab. Can we, sir, as obviously Barrister Abdullah has just mentioned about an agenda, can we say that the prohibited funding, which is also politically known as foreign funding, is it an agenda? If it is an agenda, is it good enough to obviously used in the coming general elections?
My personal views are, I don't think so it's going to be used in general elections, but I personally feel that this verdict from Election Commission is going to set example for all the political parties. And I agree with Mr. Abdullah. If there is any evidence of any other party who have taken foreign prohibited funding, then the matter should be brought in the knowledge of Election Commission. But I don't think, and into my best knowledge, and I say and I can claim that I have not seen till now that Pakistan People's Party have ever taken foreign funding or any.
All right. Thank you so much, Zulfikar Ali Badr, for joining us, and Barrister Abdullah Mumtaz also for joining us and being a part of the debate. Of course, it still remains to be seen what exactly is going to happen, what the political scenario is going to be like in the next coming days and months. But we hope that we are able to focus on the real questions and think about what is really impacting our country and what the people need to know. That's all we have from the debate. See you tomorrow.